Porter Martone from the Brampton Steelheads seems to be a name that is percolating in terms of the Blackhawks pick at 3. Mario Tirabassi, what do we know about Porter Martone?
We know that he is a big, skilled forward and would check a ton of boxes that the Blackhawks have missing in their forwards group that I think a lot of fans have started to enamor themselves with Porter Martone, the big guy, point producer, skilled, has the playmaking ability that you don't necessarily see out of a lot of big guys nowadays. Kind of that more of a hybrid power forward that has a skill set that I think outside of one skill, the Blackhawks would be all over when it comes to the number 3 pick.
98 points in 57 games with Brampton. That includes 37 goals in those 57 games. And I think as we've sort of tried to connect the dots on who might be available at 3, I think there's a lot of assumption that Michael Misa goes first overall, Matthew Schaefer goes second. So then you're looking at James Higgins and Porter Martone. And I think I'm leaning towards Martone simply because of what you talked about. The lack of size in the Blackhawks system. He checks that box. He is a proven scorer. Maybe not as strong a skater as some of the other candidates that could be in that spot. But I think when you look at what Kyle Davidson has done in terms of drafting since he's been the GM, always leaning towards speed. I think if you have a guy of average to slightly above average speed, it's not going to be terribly detrimental to what the Blackhawks are trying to build here. You still need guys who can go park themselves in front, redirect pucks, clean up the garbage in front, be able to fend off defenders to take advantage of those skill guys like Bedard and Nazar and hopefully eventually Oliver Moore and down the road. You've got to have those guys that can do the dirty work, especially as we're now, deeply into playoff season. You see how important those players can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at Hawks of the past, like Dustin Byfuglien, not the biggest skater or best skater, but a big body, a power forward that was super effective in his time in Chicago on the route to the 2010 Cup, became a legend, and even more recently, not at the same level of Dustin Byfuglien production in Chicago, but Dylan Strome, he didn't have the best skate. He's not the best skater, but put in the right situation, his skill set outmatched what he lacked necessarily in the skating ability, and he's not skating in cement blocks, but his ability to be just about average but keep up with the game around him and be able to think the game at a high level and be able to distribute at a high level like he did, working off of Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane. Porter Martone could be one of those guys that steps in and could be very complimentary to Connor Bedard, who also is not the fastest guy out there. I think he'd be able to keep up with him on the ice, both physically and mentally. Being able to read the game is really important and is part of Martone's game that I think is, you go down the list. It's just he's big. He's got, great puck skills, but just reading the game, knowing how to, put himself in the right positions, that's a big part of it. And especially when you're not the best skater, you have to be able to know where to be and get there in a more opportune time than necessarily just straight line speed. But if you're going to the wrong spot, it doesn't matter. You put yourself out of position.
Yeah, and I mean, look, there's a lot of players in the NHL that are very effective that measure some of the slowest skaters in the league. Matthew Tkachuk is has the fewest bursts over 20 and the lowest average speed, and he's very effective because his team always has the puck. And when your team has the puck and you're a big physical power forward type, you're able to get in your spot, wait in your spot while your team cycles the puck around for a perfect scoring chance. That's the hope that 2-3 years down the road, the Blackhawks are not going to be the Florida Panthers by then, but a team that should be winning puck possession battles when you consider the skill they have throughout their system. And Martone gives them a different look that they can use in a different time. And I think sometimes we get caught in a trap of, well, he's big, so he must be physical. Mm-hmm. Not true. And as you mentioned, Dylan Strome, not an overly physical guy. Martone is a guy, though, who is willing to mix it up a little bit, play physical, not afraid to add that element of play. And look, as guys come to the NHL, their games change. They evolve a little bit, so it remains to be seen exactly what Martone will be as an NHL player. But I will say this, if he maxes out as, I guess, Dylan Strome before this year, right? Because of how astronomical his numbers were. But if he becomes a Dylan Strome with the third pick, I'd probably hope for a little bit more than that.
That's what Dylan Strome was.
Yeah, if that's your second, if that's your second line center for the next 10 years, you'll take it. So
Yeah.
I just like it I know you're not supposed to pick based on need, but when the gap between Hagens, Martone, Frondell is so thin, I think you can sort of look and say, well, you know what? All things being equal, this is a big dude. We need a big dude. Let's get him in here. We'll sacrifice some skating for the size and the grit.
Yeah.
That is much needed up front.
Yeah, I mean, you talk about this draft strategy of picking the best player available, but it's the best player that's available on the Blackhawks draft board. They might have James Hagens as their number one guy. Well, if he goes, one or two, then it goes down the board. Blackhawks might have Porter Martone as their number one guy, and if he's available, then they're getting their best player available. So it all changes as the draft goes on. They're in a spot where you'd assume Matthew Schaefer is one of the first two picks because he's become basically consensus the top prospect in the draft class. But do the Islanders need him over a forward like Michael Misa or a forward and a hometown guy like James Hagens? The Sharks definitely need a defenseman. So when you get to Chicago, it's kind of open for interpretation. And I wrote about it for allchgo.com about the unpredictability of what the Blackhawks could do at number 3. Going through, it was at least a dozen mock drafts from across the top draft analysts. Porter Martone's name came up the most often 4 times. It was Cam Robinson with Elite Prospects, Scott Powers with The Athletic, Lyle Richardson with Bleacher Report, and Stephen Ellis with Daily Faceoff. Those were the 4 guys that through their mock drafts took Martone at the number 3 spot with the Blackhawks. But there's still, it's not a slam dunk. It's one or the other like we had last year, where it was either going to be Levshinov or Demidov.
Yeah.
And it's not like Bedard's year where it was clear cut. This is exactly who it's going to be. Now, drafting third and second and first is a little different, but I think when you look at it, you piece guys together and put them side by side. I think the production, the play style. You mentioned Matthew Tkachuk. That's a guy that he gets compared to. He's been compared to Blake Wheeler, Corey Perry in his prime. Like
all sounds great.
All those guys were like really stylistically a type of forward that the Blackhawks could benefit from. And if he maxes out as, top line right wing alongside Connor Bedard, his playmaking ability I would say, set up really nicely for Bedard to make that transition to more of using his shot more. The thing that made him so enticing coming into his draft year was his generational shot and being compared to Austin Matthews is like the only shot better than Bedard in a draft class has been Austin Matthews. And like, I think having a guy like Martone that can create space for Bedard and also be able to have the on puck ability to get him the puck to shoot more, I think creates a different dynamic that the Blackhawks would really benefit from.
All right, there's our profile on Brampton Steelheads forward Porter Martone.